You ever feel like you need a change? Like, even when things are all right and there's nothing really to complain about, there's still that tiny part of you that wants to shake things up?
I think it's natural to want to change, to update, and to improve. Whether you're a developer of a game franchise that's been around for over 2 decades, a Fakemon illustrator who's learning more and more every day and wants to reflect that project in their work, or a YouTuber whose channel is almost 5 years old, it's important to stay fresh and stay relevant.
How do you do, fellow kids?
A good artist is never done learning. I can't tell you how many times I've convinced myself that what I was working on at the time would be the best thing I've ever drawn. Now, of course, I know that even a few months can make a huge difference in my technical skills, my concept development, and my work ethic. I've been working on this Maza region project for about 3 years now. Yeah, 3 years. Let that sink in. In that time, I have designed and redesigned over 100 Fakemon. That's a fake Pokemon, if I wasn't clear. And if you gave me another 3 years to work on this project, I'd probably design and redesign 100 more. It's kind of nice to have this standard metric off which I can evaluate my progress as an artist. I look at an illustration I did of Malakata, my grass-type starter Pokemon from all the way back in 2020, and then I look at an illustration that I did just a few months ago, and I can really see just how much I've improved. I'm sure a lot of you have characters like this too, OCs that you came up with years ago that grow and change alongside you as you learn more and improve. The Maza region is a unique example of these kinds of artist mile markers, in so much as it has not only been for my own benefit, but also for the enjoyment of a pretty sizable audience of fans. A lot of you will share your own input on the changes I make to these designs that reflect your interests and perspectives, and it's been a very special experience to have what equates to a classroom critique of about 300,000 people. To reiterate my initial point, however, change is important. And now, I realize that one of the biggest and healthiest changes I can make for myself as an artist and as a YouTuber is to finally move past the Maza region project. Polish it up, make it look shiny and finished, and make sure that I do everything I can to help the devoted team of developers working on the fan game. The Maza region will never truly be over. There's too much amazing work done by so many more artists than just myself that yet needs to be appreciated. The fan game is still being developed, and I cannot wait to play it when it is done. However, I myself need to move on to other projects. I think it'll be good for me. I think it'll be good for my artwork, and I think that all of you will enjoy what new things I have to share with you. But I'm not done with the Maza region yet. I would be remiss if I left the Pokedex the way it was, without a few final changes. Before we start talking about those changes, however, I want to take a quick moment to introduce you all to the sponsor of today's video, Rocket Money. As we transition into the next stage of Subjectively, we've been trying out a lot of new things, as you've probably noticed in this video. While we're excited to expand our horizons as we finish fine-tuning the Maza region, we realize that change can be scary, especially when it's tied in with something as close to your heart as, for example, a 5-year-old YouTube channel. Luckily, in these moments of uncertainty, Rocket Money is there to help you track spending and plan savings, making these transitions as easy as possible. Rocket Money is an all-in-one finance platform that helps you save more and spend less. The Personal Finance Manager allows you to manage your subscriptions, lower bills, monitor your credit score, and build your personal savings all in one place. Rocket Money makes canceling unwanted subscriptions easy. Rocket Money safely and securely identifies recurring charges and, with just a tap, cancels unwanted subscriptions. You'll never need to get on the phone or deal with a hidden cancellation button. Rocket Money does all of the hard work for you. Something I wasn't expecting Rocket Money to help me out with was managing my spending habits. Yeah, I knew about some of my subscriptions, but what I wasn't aware of was the fact that I was consistently spending the same amount of money on the same things. I was buying a new Switch game at almost the exact same time every month, and I'll be honest with you, I wasn't even aware of that. Rocket Money helped me identify this pattern, and now I can be aware of these habits and hold off on a new game until I have the extra money to buy it. Rocket Money also makes budgeting a breeze by automatically monitoring your spending by category, sending you friendly notifications when you exceed your budget, and it helps you visualize your spend-to-earn ratios. This feature has felt super useful and incredibly helpful while we've been budgeting for tech and production upgrades relating to Subjectively's new changes. Rocket Money is trusted by over 3.4 million members, and counting. That's over 3.4 million members taking control of their budgeting and spending, and finding and removing unwanted or hidden subscriptions. If you'd like to join the, again, 3.4 million members who are taking control of their finances with Rocket Money, head on over to rocketmoney.com/subjectively or find our link in the video description. Thank you so much to Rocket Money for sponsoring this video, and now, let's decide which Mazda region Pokemon needs some changes. A small part of me wants to go through and redraw every single Pokemon in the Mazda region, just so that the final key art for each individual character was all made at the same time. But come on, that's ridiculous. I mean, it wouldn't take me another 3 years to redraw all of these Pokemon, but it would certainly be a several month-long project. Besides, there are plenty of Pokemon from the Mazda region decks whose key art and designs are, in my opinion, perfect and don't need any changes. In fact, before I get started on redrawing any of my Pokemon, let's take a sec to sort out which ones need changes, which ones need subtle tweaks, which ones need complete overhauls, and which ones are fine as is. This may seem like an unnecessary overcomplication, but I assure you that taking your time when going into a massive project like this is an essential step towards a final product that other people will enjoy and you can be proud of. I wanted to get some input when compiling the list of which Pokemon needed changes and to what extent they needed to be changed, so I streamed my tier maker process live. I made 4 tiers: no change, minor tweaks, subtle changes, and major overhauls. If you'd like to get a more in-depth explanation as to what each of these tiers mean, the full VOD of the stream is right here on our YouTube channel. But in a nutshell, no change is just that. I will not be making any changes to those Pokemon. Minor tweaks really just means updated key art. Nothing about the design will change. The Pokemon in subtle changes are the ones that I want to slightly adjust, maybe change 1 or 2 minor elements of the design or pose, as well as update the key art. And the last tier, major overhauls, is reserved for Pokemon that I want to completely reimagine. Changes on par with those I made to Tartusk or Perizodal. As you can see, most of the Pokedex falls in the no changes tiers. Most of my Pokemon I'm happy with, and I don't want to change. Some of you, especially those of you who have been Subjectively fans for a while now, are probably sick of seeing me make the same changes to the same piece of artwork over and over and over again. But it's not just my Pokemon that get these updates. If you've been following along with the apocryphal story, you've seen certain characters receive major redesigns over the course of the 4 years since that story was first conceived. In that time, I've improved not only my technical skills, but also my conceptual development skills and my storytelling abilities. Same thing goes for my Pokemon art. Malakata really hasn't changed all that much in terms of design, but my original illustration of the character looks awkward and unfinished when compared to its current artwork. That's because I've made minor technical improvements to things like line work, shape, hue, and value. Those same changes are the ones I'll be making to the Pokemon in the minor tweaks tier. All of these designs are ones that I'm happy with, and I don't want to change anything about how they look other than how they're rendered. For some, it's a matter of line work. The line work is too thick, or sometimes too thin, and sometimes I relied too heavily on the drawing assistance tools that made the line art look too perfect and neat. I now have access to the awesome Pokedex liner that we made in our custom brush pack, and the subtle difference in brush actually makes a huge difference in these designs. Other changes that I made to these mons had a lot to do with brushes as well. The painting brushes that Claire made for our Pokedex pack do a much better job at capturing those subtle shifts in hue and value than the default Procreate brushes. The argument of making Fakemon art look like modern official Pokemon key art versus just doing it in your own style is always something that I think about, and of course, you can make Fakemon in any style that you like. However, my goal has always been to make this key art look like modern day official art, and these brushes do a much better job at achieving that look. I won't spend too much time on these changes because they're all pretty subtle, but here is the updated art for each Pokemon in the minor tweaks tier alongside their original artwork. Tetsupi, Lupacabra, Ziazaya, Zusk, Mazemen, Beakpeep, Shibalbat, Crocrozen, thawed form, Rotatona, Regibrute, Regiwood, and Regiturnal. These were just minor tweaks to keep the art style of the Pokedex consistent with my current style of rendering. If I kept working on this project for another 3 years, I'd probably do more changes a month from now. But this is the last update that any of these Pokemon are going to receive. Now I want to take a look at the Pokemon in the subtle changes tier. These designs need a little more attention than each of the Pokemon from the last tier, so we're going to go through each one at a time. First up, Zolupine. Zolupine is one of those weird designs that, hey, you either like it or you don't. I didn't want to adjust anything about its core design. The shape of the body, the pose, the personality, all of these things will stay relatively the same. One of the major things I wanted to adjust was the left paw. Now, fans have been pointing this out to me for months, but it really looks like the left paw is facing the wrong way. I'm not sure how that happened, but it's got to be fixed. I also want to adjust the anatomy on the back. Have a clearer distinction between the shoulders of the Pokemon and the actual spine. What's more, I want to make clear how much of the shape is tufts and how much of it is actually skin and bone. The colors will all stay the same, but I'll use my nice new brushes to make sure the rendering is up to date. Next up, Lilarinia. The rest of its line is going to receive some major overhauls, but Lilarinia can stay more or less the same. I wanted to change its pose so that the body was easier to read. This also made for a more interesting silhouette, which also changed as I adjusted the hair. I wanted the hair to feel more, well, like hair. It kind of looked like big, clumpy tentacles before. I also made some slight changes to the face so that it was more predominant and read more clearly. The colors here stayed the same, and I'm going to use these subtle changes to inform the changes for the rest of the line as well. The two evolutions are up next for a change. Starting with Therion, I had a couple of suggestions made by the chat during the livestream when I decided which Pokemon were going to go where on this list. The main complaint was the head. People suggested that I added more mud on top so that it didn't look so insectoid. They also recommended that I brought the ears all the way down to the ground, which I liked. I changed up the pose a tiny bit, and the eyes were adjusted to better match the new head adornments. I also changed the face because, well, let's face it, it looked really awkward before. The rest of the design, including the colors, stayed the same. Then I moved on to Gustion. This one I liked more than Therion to begin with, so fewer changes were necessary. I mostly adjusted the collar of clouds around its neck so that they seemed more well considered, and with Therion, the face needed some work. I also adjusted the ears and changed up their designs as well. And I also changed the pose so that the whole thing felt lighter and more floaty. Now, Frizzard and Zarcoil, two more weird Pokemon from the Mazda region whose weirdness was not a factor I wanted to lose. Frizzard, the air conditioner dragon, was pretty fine as is, but I wanted to make some adjustments to the pose so that the different parts of its body read more clearly. I also changed the pose so that when the two Pokemon were posed together, they played off of each other's energy. I also adjusted the jaw a little bit too, just so that it read more clearly. And I also cleaned up some aspects of the shapes so that its dimensionality was less inconsistent. Now, Zarcoil needed a little more work. The head on this one was close to what I wanted, but the shapes were confusing. I wanted to be sure that it read as a cylindrical shape that tapered off at the end. Like with Frizzard, the pose was changed, and I added a few more adornments to spaces on the body that felt too empty. The size of the tail was adjusted for the same reason. Too much negative space. Finally, I did make some changes to the color palette. All a bit too saturated before, but I used some other Pokemon colors as reference to make sure it felt less like a plastic toy. Now, I know we all love Crocrozin, and I love it too, but the pose on its frozen form looked too awkward. That is, it wasn't reading the way I wanted it to. These changes were actually pretty minor, but I just wanted to adjust some things so that it didn't look like it would fall over simply by standing still. Ariamano was the last one on this tier that needed to be changed, and I think I saved the most complicated changes in this tier for last. Ariamano's main concept focused around making the whole thing look like a false hand, but that doesn't really read in its current design. The quickest and easiest thing I could do to help convey that better was to change its pose. This also helped the issue that I had with its body. It all looked too flat, like a ribbon. I didn't want that. In this pose, you were also able to see more of the back of the head, and that showed off the larger eyes that you couldn't really see in the original artwork.
The final touches were to the colors, and I only changed a little bit, but I think that helped up the contrast at the focal points of the design. So here they are, all of the changes made to the Pokemon in this tier and their original artwork. Zolupine, Lilarinia, Terrion, Gustion, Frizzard, Zarcoil, Crocrozen, and Ariamano. If you were fans of these Pokemon before the changes, I think you should like them even more now. I tried to retain all of the aspects of their designs that I liked, while sanding down some of the more unsightly bumps that kept them from reaching their full potential. If you didn't like them before, well, there's a chance that you still might not. But that's how it goes with something like Pokemon. Not everyone can like every design. Now we have one final tier we need to get to, the Major Overhaul tier. This list is made up of only 7 Pokemon, but they all require a lot more work than the previous designs we've looked at so far. Among these 7 designs are the 4 Legendary Sirens, a group of Pokemon that I designed during 2021's Mermaid Challenge. The Sirens were designed over 2 years ago, if you can believe that. And while I really do love their concept and parts of their execution, they need a lot of work. I want people to appreciate them for how weird and unique they are, and not nitpick over anatomy issues or confusion over scale. As much as I want to redesign these guys right now, I feel like they may deserve their own video. Initially, the driving motivation for me to do the video that you're watching right now was to have an excuse to redesign the Sirens, but doing all of these other key art updates has really taken it out of me. I don't want to rush the rework of the Sirens, so I'll save them and the other 3 Pokemon in the Major Overhaul tier for another video. And if you are really astute, you'll notice that there's one more Pokemon on this list that I still haven't talked about yet. Boinkleby. Now, Boinkleby was part of my Jokemon series, so I never intended to take its design as seriously as the rest of my decks. However, since it is a tribute to my dog, Panko, I do kind of want people to be able to appreciate it as a legitimate contribution to the Maza region. For now, I'm leaving it alone, but there's a good chance that I'll give it a subtle changes redesign. Let me know what you think down in the comments. I know this video was a little different from what we normally do on this channel, but hey, change is good. If you're an artist, or you aspire to be one, do yourself a favor. Never stop changing. I've heard a lot of people sing the praises of an artist who never bends to the critiques of others, who sticks to their convictions like barnacles on the hull of a ship. In my opinion, though, the best artists are the ones who are always willing to learn more, the ones who can admit that they have so much more room to grow. I've had so much fun working on this Maza region project, and I've enjoyed every minute of it. From the things I've created to the people I've inspired, it's been an incredibly fulfilling experience for me. So, though my contributions to the Maza region project are soon coming to an end, I hope that all of you will join me on the next step of my artistic adventure, whatever that may be. Thank you all so much for watching. I hope you enjoyed this video. If you want to help support the channel, consider becoming a Patreon supporter. We have awesome perks every month, and every dollar helps keep our channel running strong. Thanks again for watching, and we'll see you all in the next video.